Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. A quick info before we begin. Today's video has two stories and both of them have updates. Now let's get started with the first one. This post is from the subreddit Relationship Advice and it's by user I think my wife is hot 1. My male 36 wife, female 43, thinks I couldn't be attracted to her and her therapist agreed. Background: married for a little over 2 years after dating for a very short time, around 3 months. We met at a work event and I was immediately smitten with my wife. It was like out of a movie. I saw her chatting with a group of people and in my head I heard, "Oh, there she is." She was newly divorced and took some convincing on my part, but we have been together from that night on and get along extremely well. Now, for clarity, I am extremely attracted to my wife. We may just still be in the honeymoon stage, but I've never felt this way about other women. And because it pertains to the conversation we had today with her therapist, I would say the majority of the population would find her attractive and not in a niche way. She is objectively attractive. I don't feel like I settled for her, and very few people have noticed the slight age difference. She, however, wins in personality, outgoing and charming, and she makes about 3 times as much money as I do. A couple of months ago, we ran into an ex of mine, and by ex, we literally dated for maybe a month and were never exclusive. After, my wife mentioned how different they were, age, hair color, body type, etc., and it ended in a pretty heated argument. We have had 3 to 4 conversations since, all of which I was trying to convince my wife I'm not going to leave her for a woman I dated years ago. Then last week she asked if I would go to her therapist with her today and I agreed. She has been seeing her for about 8 years for anxiety and a bout of depression that happened before we met. The session started normally enough and I had figured out why we were there, so I just jumped into thinking the therapist would be on my side and would help me calm my wife's fears. That's not what happened. The therapist did very little talking, although their long silences and knowing glances started to piss me off right away. The thing that stood out the most was how my wife reiterated how she doesn't see how I would be attracted to her, and the therapist didn't even disagree. Like, I felt like a crazy person. My wife is beautiful, charming, and funny. It feels like I wished her into existence. She brought up the age difference, 7 years? My looks, people have said I'm conventionally attractive, and how quickly I wanted to get married as all reasons for why I am basically a gold digger. First off, we both wanted to get married quickly. I asked and figured she would want a long engagement, but she didn't, so we got married. Second, I never even discussed money with her until after we were married and never dreamed she made so much more than I do. She said she doesn't think I'm after her money, but that I enjoy the lifestyle while I'm with her and it makes it easier to pretend I'm attracted to her. Sorry, more attracted to her as I play it up. I'm completely blindsided and don't really want to talk to my family or friends. It's humiliating being accused of marrying someone for a lifestyle. And for clarity, I moved into her house and I rent out my old home, but that income just covers the mortgage and the company that manages it. All our money goes into a joint checking account with automatic transfers into savings, etc. Our bills are paid from that account. I looked at our bank account and I spent significantly less than she does each month on average. After leaving, I was in a complete panic that she was going to leave me, even though I felt humiliated and loved her so much. I immediately wanted to offer to sign a prenup or separate bank accounts or both, but I just froze. My wife seemed so sad and I was so frustrated. I didn't even do anything wrong. The women I've dated in my past don't have a similar type, and to be honest, I didn't really date, more like hook up for a few months and then move on. I love my wife. She is the first woman I have ever met that I have had a real partnership with. Like, we were a team and now that's all gone. I don't feel like I have the strength to leave her. It scares me that I can't even envision a scenario where I would leave. She is my favorite person. How do I rebuild trust when I don't feel I ever did anything to lose it? Well, Upi, first thing, being a general after the war, is maybe you guys should have dated a little bit longer for her to come to terms with the whole of the relationship. But it was a mutual decision on both of your parts, so now you have to live and solve this reality. Now your question is, how do you rebuild trust when you don't feel you did anything wrong? Well, here's the thing. It doesn't matter how you feel or what you feel you did. It's how your wife perceived it in this case, because she's the one that's losing trust in you. Now, I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying that maybe you're doing things that you don't realize that play to her insecurities and have landed you guys in this situation. OP, in simple, if I were you, I would show her this post. It sounds really honest and you come off as somebody who truly loves her and wants to solve this whole thing. I would think that if you ask her to read it, she would take the time to read it and not just dismiss you. I mean, she loves you, right? And as a side note, I gotta say, I don't like her therapist. I mean, you mentioned these silent looks they were giving each other while you were talking. Yeah, I probably would have been pissed off as well. That's very disrespectful. In any case, what do you guys think about this whole situation? What would you do if you were in OP's shoes? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. Matruv says, it doesn't sound like you did anything wrong, but are a victim of her insecurities. My suggestion to you is that the two of you see an unbiased therapist for additional help. Therapists are human and can develop an alliance with a long-time patient, sometimes to the point of subconsciously taking sides. I think her therapist reinforced her fears and caused more damage instead of helping in this case. And OP responds, I don't know why, but you saying that therapists are human made me feel a ton better. It's so weird to think of my wife as insecure. It's an odd feeling seeing someone you think so much of being so insecure they are unattractive. Benagain too says, so what is her proposed solution? What did the therapist suggest? Did either of them have any sort of path you could travel to fix this? Because unless there's something they think you can do to fix this, it kinda seems like a pointless thing to bring up. You came to the obvious solution, offer a prenup, but it's also a pretty upsetting thing to have to do. Plus, now you are always going to wonder what your wife thinks of you. Does she really believe that you'd do that to her? I think your therapist has badly effed up here. A good therapist should have asked questions to help your wife figure it out for herself, especially a person who's long battled with depression. This sucks, man, I'm sorry. I left early. I think I was having a panic attack and left and waited in the car, but I don't want to wait for the next shoe to drop. From what I can remember, there were no fixes suggested, but I should ask once I calm down and collect my thoughts. And Deleted says, your title said the therapist agreed, but in the story you said she just didn't disagree. I get the feeling you don't know how therapy works. They aren't there to take sides or tell someone they are wrong. You need to tell your wife everything you've written here. Also, why are you talking about leaving her? To preemptively prevent her from leaving you? And OP responds, yeah, I've never seen a therapist, so my understanding is limited. When I wrote this, I was mad and scared, and my first reaction is to run, but I don't want to leave my wife. I just woke up to all these comments about how normal and how badly I reacted. If I want this to work, I need to talk to my wife and really listen. Additional information from OP's comments. So, during the session, I wasn't at my best. I rambled on like an idiot for the first 15 minutes about how my wife can't get upset every time we run into a person from my past and how much we love each other. Then immediately went silent when my wife was explaining why she thought I was not really in love with her. In total, it was about 25 minutes before I just got up. I have no experience with therapy and went in with the idea that we were going to solve my wife's jealousy in a few minutes and get on with our life. I didn't have realistic expectations and panicked immediately when things didn't go my way. I was completely blindsided by my own expectations of how things were going to go, and when she didn't back me up in the session, I left early. I think I was having a panic attack and waited in the car. I've never been so paralyzed with fear, and it isn't helping anyone. Instead of feeling attacked, I need to really listen before I make any rash decisions. I don't really care if she makes more or less money than me. I lived a comfortable life before. I make around $110,000 a year, middle class with no kids or debt. And nothing really has changed except for a slightly bigger house in a much better neighborhood. And I'm perfectly fine with signing a retroactive prenup if necessary. In any case, it seems her therapist was in the wrong and I don't think I'll be going back. However, she is a big part of my wife's life, so I don't plan on bad-mouthing her, just suggesting we see someone new. Alright, well, the community gave OP a lot to think about because apparently it sparked something in him and we got a lot more context regarding the whole thing. So what do you guys think at this point? Do you think OP is a gold digger or is he really in love? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the update to see what happened next and how the story ends. But of course, before that, here's another one of my playlists for you to enjoy after this video. Now let's continue with the update. Despite my hyperbole title, I received a lot of feedback on my last post and thought I would thank everyone again and do an update. So, talk with my wife. Last weekend, I was made aware of a lot of things I was doing to compound my wife's fear of being abandoned and or used. The major thing that stuck out to me was my immaturity and unwillingness to discuss anything serious. When my wife would bring up her ex-husband, finances in particular, I would A, make a joke, or B, try to end the conversation as soon as possible. I'm not sure why, it just made me uncomfortable and didn't see the value of discussing things that weren't a major problem to me. I was happy and my needs were being met, so I assumed hers were too. It was my most damaging mistake. Another misunderstanding happened with my ex. In my mind, it was a quick 5-minute conversation. To my wife, it was much more. So, about 6 months ago, I injured my knee running. I had been up to that point a pretty serious low mileage runner, 5 to 10 miles 3 times a week. Damn, that's low mileage? I guess I'm no mileage. After the injury, my doctor suggested I try weightlifting as I was worried about physical therapy not being enough. Well, I hired a personal trainer and have been a gym rat ever since. It's become a serious hobby that I apparently obsessively talk about. I have invited my wife, who occasionally does yoga, several times and even talked about getting her a membership for Christmas, even though she showed no interest. So when we ran into my ex and I noticed she looked significantly different, she put on about 10 pounds of muscle, I complimented her and we talked about weightlifting for a few minutes while my wife stood to the side. My ex told me to look her up on Instagram, and while I did look her up to add her, her page was mostly advertising supplements, so I didn't end up doing it. My wife took this chance to read this as proof that I was unhappy with the way she looked and was trying to get her to change. Add in some harsh comments from one of our co-workers about our relationship, her sister pushing for a prenup, and my lack of communication, everything came to a head these last few months. Then, her therapist gave me the most helpful advice. It was to get my own personal therapist. I kind of just picked one from a list my provider emailed me, but it seems to be going well. A lot of things were discussed, but my major takeaway was that it isn't my job to calm my wife's fears completely. Listening and being reassuring is healthy, but trying to make everything better won't help either of us. My therapist said even if I tried, my wife's own voice in her head runs 24/7 and I could never keep up. This was hard to hear as I have definitely made some major mistakes, but besides acknowledging them and doing better, everything else is out of my control. She recommended a book called The Happiness Trap, which I haven't ordered yet, but she said it would help me understand what it's like to have anxiety and may explain, not excuse, some of my wife's behavior. My therapist also said I should look into my wife's therapist, as she sounds unlicensed, and if I felt comfortable, she could put in a complaint on my behalf. Her therapist crossed the line by agreeing to do couples therapy. I will probably do this, but I'm letting things settle. Anyway, after probably the worst 2 days of my life, things seem to be better. I haven't brought up a prenup because my wife seemed offended when she told me her sister pushed for a prenup as a solution. I did offer separate bank accounts, but she said no and only requested that we update her will and create one for me, as I didn't even have one. I thought it would be weird, but we both put each other's as beneficiaries along with her 2 children if we both died. We only filled out the paperwork and still have to send it to her lawyer. It's made a difference, but I'm not sure why. I also did delete my Facebook. I haven't used it for years, but when I went on to check it, it was a very single me. Lots of old girlfriends, holidays, etc. And I never even updated that I was married. I had a notification from my wife when she tried years ago, but it just sat there. My wife is still fairly active on Facebook, and I could see how that would feel awful even though she never mentioned it. Like, my whole page was embarrassing. I can't even imagine what her family or friends thought when they found me. I was completely public and kind of a douche on there. I still feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, but honestly, there is no other person I would ever want to try this hard for. And if I'm becoming a better person for trying, it will be worth it no matter the outcome. Things are still really shaky and she's leaving in a few days for work. This whole episode has kicked off my anxiety, but I'm hopeful. Smiley face. Thanks everyone. Well, OP, it's not an entirely happy update, but things are moving forward, they are improving, and you've definitely gained a lot of perspective. So like you say, the growth that you're going through is worth it no matter the outcome. However, of course, the positive outcome would be that you and your wife get to live happily from now on. So here's wishing you the best for the both of you. Keep working on it, OP, and thanks for sharing. Now, let's move on to the next post that, like I said in the beginning, also has an update. This post is also from the subreddit Relationship Advice, and it's by user Deleted. It's a one-way street with boyfriend. Should I end things? Dating a year to a 23 male. I am a 24 female. I've woken up to phone calls at 3 AM from him, asking me for a ride, and I always go pick him up. Today, I needed a ride because I dropped my Jeep off to get a much needed repair, and he said he would absolutely not wake up early to get me, and that I would have to wait a couple of hours. I also had a meeting with an apartment that morning, so when I dropped off my Jeep, the dealer offered me a free shuttle ride. I had them drop me off at the apartment complex to tour. I don't have a key to his place, so I couldn't go back until he was awake. He called and asked if I had found a ride back yet, and said he didn't feel good. I said I was sorry he felt bad, but yes, I could use a ride. He sounded annoyed. I've been waiting almost a half hour when he lives down the road. I think it's time to end things. What do you guys think? Well, OP, I'd say you should have ended things when you realized it was a one-way street here. Your relationship is lacking respect from him to you, and I don't believe in any relationship where there isn't respect and one claims to love the other. That doesn't exist. You cannot love somebody if you don't respect them. So to answer your question, OP, yeah, I think it is time to end things. So just be upfront, end it, it doesn't work for you, and don't allow yourself to get sucked back in. No promises, no selling, no nothing. It's done. He already showed you who he was. And what do you guys think about this one? What would you say to OP? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. The Friendly Grim says, he doesn't sound too concerned about your safety, sending you out onto the road at 3 AM to pick him up and telling you to wait around for a few hours for him to get up, and garages tend to be out in the sticks too, suggests he cares more for his convenience than your well-being. It's selfish behavior which doesn't bode well for the future. If he isn't bothered about your welfare and good opinion now, how much less bothered will he be 10 years down the line? Also, if you have kids with him, would you be happy with them showing this sort of laziness and lack of concern towards them? Slikske says, if he can't be bothered to return a favor you've done for him more than once, what else can he be bothered with? He's obviously not as invested in you if it's an inconvenience to him. Better to find out early in a relationship. This is definitely not a good sign for the long term. You're still young. You can find someone better suited for you, who's willing to invest just as much in a relationship as you do. Honestly, your boyfriend sounds like a selfish prick. And Coastal Kid says, this is completely petty and childish behavior on his part. Unless he had a super valid excuse, like if he worked nights and needed to sleep before his shift, I wouldn't really stand for this. If you think it's time, then let it go. Alright, well, the community told OP what they thought about her boyfriend and the relationship, and the major consensus is OP needs to move on. So let's move on to the update to see what happened next and how the story ends. My Jeep is still in the shop and I had a very important doctor's appointment at 10 AM. This office only schedules months in advance. It would be a $30 Uber there, making it $60 there and back. Instead of helping me out and taking me to this appointment, he knew it was important. He came home from work the night before and told me his friend was coming over and they were going to a house all night. Didn't tell me why, didn't ask if I wanted to come. Mind you, I was stuck at the house all day with no car and he gave no regard if I needed to go get food. He came and left so fast I didn't even have a chance to ask. So I had to cancel my appointment and reschedule for months out. He woke up that noon and asked if we could have sex today, like we had to schedule it, which was weird. And still not having my Jeep back, we hung out at the house. All he did was try to seduce me. Clearly, I wasn't in the mood after thinking about everything you guys said about my original post. And because I said no, he began acting like a total prick. I asked him why he wasn't supportive of me, and instead of talking about it, he turned it into a fight about him, saying, "When have you ever been supportive of me?" Let me tell you, I very much am. I always pushed him to do better and go after what he wanted. He never answered my question. You guys were right. I'm dating a boy and not a man. So guess who's single and happy now? Moving on to better things. P.S. He's blocked. Well, OP, congratulations on standing up for yourself. You are in a better position than you were before you broke up, so good for you. And just as a rule of thumb, whenever you feel like you respect your partner more than they respect you, or that you have to do more than they do or they put into the relationship, it's a good moment to assess everything before making any decisions. But if the conclusion is there is no respect, then there is no love, and you move on. That would be the prudent thing to do. In any case, here's wishing you all the best in the future, OP. Thank you for sharing and take care. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out. So here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.